Okay, so we are live with a new stream. This one might be a little bit shorter, but as usual, it depends on when we finish making our points. As you know, I recently replied to a Shoe0nhead video, and the response to that was interesting, to say the least. So I kind of want to just put a disclaimer out there that if you are just coming to here and you see the title and you're like, oh, somebody's replying to Shoe0nhead, I better defend her blindly, and make outrageous claims such as you're just trying to get views or you have some sort of so-called hate boner. I don't have the time or emotional energy to put hatred into a YouTube personality that I don't personally know. This is just want to talk about some of the things that she said in this video and nothing more. So if you have something productive to say about that, great, we can talk about it. If not, I don't really know what to tell you.
Although it is interesting that her video has more views than the video she's responding to.
Yeah, I guess that a lot of people don't actually go over to the video in question. Although I did go over to that one. I did watch that one too, and the response was surprisingly a lot of support, but I kind of want to touch on why that's weird a little bit into this. So I'm just going to play the video, and we'll pause at various points when we have something to say. I mean, I'll stop where I want to say something, but if you've got something, feel free to just...
Well, just my disclaimer, I only have somewhat of a cursory understanding of everything that's going on. Excuse me if I don't involve myself in the ramblings of the quote-unquote anti and pro SJW communities. I'm doing other things, many other things going on, so I'm not completely privy to everything that's going on. So everything I know is pretty basic at this point.
You haven't seen this video yet, right? The whole thing?
Not the whole thing.
Okay. I mean, I don't think you missed much, but we'll find out along the way.
Awesome. Let the record show, I've always liked Lacey Green. Just yesterday, Milos Stewart made a video where he's like, hey, I've said some bad things in the past that I don't really necessarily like the way I worded them. Like, I want to be open to criticism. I want to start ignoring trolls. And I was like, yeah. And a year or so.
Okay, so the reason the whole Milo Stewart thing with this like instant praise of Milo being open to criticism and stuff, that's fine if they actually really mean it. But one thing I do want to say is it's not like Milo Stewart has pulled back completely on their views or even made any kind of apology for being like, well, all these people are racist, sexist, transphobic by default. What happened was in Milo Stewart's video, they mentioned something about how they had been blindly supporting some people that spoke against the so-called anti-feminist people, such as Ghazi Kodzo or Kodo. I don't know what their name is exactly, but they're often referred to as Black Hitler because it's that black nationalist person that always says white people owe him reparations. He sounds like a budget Chris Tucker. So the thing is, Milo said, I'm not supporting Ghazi anymore because of anti-Semitic views. Well, what about all the racism against white people? I mean, is that somehow okay? Is that better? That's why I'm not really 100% on board with that.
It's just a reactionary thing. So it's not just a, hey, this is me being introspective and realizing that it's better if I don't do this. It's just all about, hey, look at me.
I mean, they did claim they were going to be more open to criticism and stuff, but I mean, I don't know. First of all, I'm not too concerned with Milo Stewart because that's not really the focus of this, but whenever somebody says something like that after coming out of this phase where they're saying all this stuff with asserting all these things, I do have to admit that I'm kind of skeptical as to whether or not they're being genuine or just kind of, I don't know, posturing meaninglessly, but we'll continue.
Virtue signaling.
people who believed in the trans trenders, who would see people like Milo, Stewart, and Riley Dennis and go, "You're not a man, you're not a woman, stop pretending." And so I would call them out on this stuff. I'd be like, you don't want to take hormones, you don't want to get surgery or anything. You're fake.
Which, to be fair, I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. I mean, the definition of transgender was to transition
to another gender. I mean,
right. Whether it was socially in preparation for medically, but now people are kind of stopping at the social aspect and saying, well, you don't need the dysphoria to be transgender anymore. Which at that point, if they're not experiencing dysphoria, then they've kind of lost the ground to say that it's, you know, it's this mental thing that I can't overcome. This kind of makes it look like it's a personal choice.
Which is pretty dangerous, all things considered, if just based on the types of responses that they give towards anybody who criticizes the concept, or at least the social acceptance of transgenderism. It doesn't lend itself well to being taken seriously, because this gives it the opportunity for criticism that the only way that they can defend, or the only way they can rebut, is by not having an argument, really going more towards rhetorical use or rhetorical speech and less actual demonstrable fact. As much as I hate sounding like one of those people that at this point, all it really does is reduce them to making rhetorical arguments.
Right.
And the reason this was because you guys know I grew up with a trans person. He is my best friend. And I saw a lot of the shit he went through. And to me, like, Milo and Riley were just like, it's fun. It's fun to be trans. Woo! I can be a girl and then I can be a guy the next day. You know, the whole thing. To me, calling out this was protecting trans people. Me saying, you're not really trans, was me going, like, please don't lump these people that are just, like, pretending and having fun in with the real trans people. So to me, it was like, I was actually passionate about the things I was saying. Recently, and very recently.
So I think that I can say that the reason why most people call out these things is it's not because they're trying to police somebody's identity. It's quite the opposite, where the people that are saying that they have these identities are coming out and trying to assert their reality to everybody else and make these outrageous claims, and that's why people are responding to it. It's not just somebody sees a person and says, hey, look at that non-binary creature, and then just decides to bully them needlessly, which, I mean, I imagine may happen somewhere at some point, but in regards to people responding to these ideological type of situations.
Recently, 6, 8 months, I don't even know. I've been just reflecting on that, and it's, I don't know what goes on in people's minds. I don't know what goes on in their lives. I don't know what they do. All I know is what they put on YouTube.
And that's, I mean, that's actually a decent point, where people will watch somebody's, you know, YouTube content or social media and then make the assumption that that's the entirety of their existence, or that they somehow know everything about that person because of that. And I think that's false, as much as people do put a lot of their lives on social media these days. Either it goes one of two ways. Somebody is extremely optimistic and overtly positive at all times, or it's the opposite. I'm depressed. I hate my life. You know, woe is me. It's like there's two extremes.
Yes, and because you don't understand what goes on in people's lives, I think that's a double-edged sword. I think people then shouldn't be having YouTube videos, or they shouldn't be leaving comments as though they do understand, or though they can impose a certain perspective on people. And at the same time, sure, she's right that if she doesn't understand, and I guess her conclusion is she doesn't understand, so she really shouldn't be trying to criticize anybody. That part makes sense. But I would also argue that the corollary to that is that then people should not be imposing their perspective on everybody else, because everybody's going to have different perspectives.
Right. I mean, if you're putting your opinion out there, we can say try to keep the personal stuff out of it if you're not really coming into it with a real argument. But if you're putting your opinions out there, then those, at the very least, those ideas and opinions are open to response and criticism. You're not just going to find blind agreement across the board, no matter who you are.
And Riley and Milo looked like they were having fun. They were all like body positivity. They were like, you're trans, but you know, you don't have dysphoria, that's fine, blah, blah, blah. It was all very positive. And again, that was me going, that's not what trans is. Like, trans is like mentally anguished, blah, blah, blah. Like, the thing is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what these people like. I don't know what they're feeling. I don't know whatever. It's like, again, I'm really sorry if this video is just ADHD all over the place. But it's like, sometimes I come out on Ask FM and stuff, and I talk about my depression, and I talk about my anxiety, I talk about my OCD and stuff like that, and people are like, wow, I didn't notice that. You're always like so happy, just because they're not super open with the internet. And again, you guys know, because I made a video a few weeks ago or a week back where I'm like, I don't know about these non-binary things anymore. I don't know. Bill Nye fucked my shit up, by the way. Bill Nye fucked all the shit up.
I don't understand. I mean, she doesn't really explain too much about the Bill Nye part, so we can only speculate. But I can't really figure out how that Bill Nye segment with both the ice cream and the sex junk song and all that nonsense, I don't know how that could convince somebody of anything, because it just looked like insanity to me. The fact that Bill Nye made a comparison from the clip that I saw to the fact that a clownfish can change their sex and then use that as some sort of example. I mean, how is that even relevant to a human being? If I cut off my arm, is it going to grow back because a starfish can regenerate? That's not how reality works. And if Bill Nye is going to pretend to be this science guy, as he's often called, he can't be using examples that wouldn't be relevant to a human being. It seems absurd to me.
I mean, I haven't seen the segment, and I probably never will, so I don't completely understand the extent of the analogy that he made. But to me, if it is what it sounds like, that's intellectual dishonesty at best, because everybody knows that a clownfish is not a human being, and on top of that, a clownfish, they are conflating, so they have to choose one of two positions. Either they have to choose and accept that sex and gender are not the same thing, therefore a clownfish changing sex is an apples to orange comparison with changing a gender, or they have to accept that the previous interpretation of gender, which is, or now I guess the modern interpretation, which is that they're interchangeable, is the correct thing. And therefore, if then you have to start basing things on whether or not that species can do that. So if a clownfish, which they can, and various amphibians can change their sex, well, that also is that's a response to something, and it's something that is part of their biology. There's nothing in human biology that arbitrarily forces a change at this point. There's nothing that they're saying that. Now, we could make the argument that perhaps the reason it's so trendy now is because of a social and biological response to something. But at this point, Nobody has said that. So it's not, you can't say that a human has the same capabilities that a fish or an amphibian has, because they don't. They can't change anything at will or in response to something.
Right. So we'll continue on. I think that there's a little bit more regarding this stuff.
Still don't know. I don't know the genders thing. I don't know. I've come to the conclusion that if you're not hurting anybody, it's not a big deal, and you can call yourself whatever the fuck you want. But like, I feel.
All right. So as usual, covered this before, but I have a big problem with the not hurting anybody argument. Really, because I mean it's extremely simplistic. I feel like if you have a valid reason as to why something should be okay, you could probably come up with something a little bit better to support you than it's not hurting anybody else. It also takes on the assumption that it's correct that it's not hurting anybody else. But I would really, in this kind of situation, I would argue differently, because first of all, it could be harmful to the individual that is maybe confused about their identity if they're having this kind of thing pushed on them. That is not contrary to what the media has been pushing and schools are teaching. That is not settled science. It's just, we don't know if it's hurting somebody, and where do you draw the line? At what point is it okay to harm somebody? At what point is it not? Because people could make the claim that they are being harmed by this, and so then what? You're just going to say, well, oh, these people are being harmed, or these people are being harmed. Who do we pick? And there was one more thing that I had, but it seems to have slipped my mind, but maybe it'll get back to me.
Well, the usual what I see people do is that if somebody is hurt, and it's somebody that they don't want to deal with, then they'll just find some kind of insult, some pejorative to assign to them, so that they can say, okay, well, that doesn't count because they are these types of people, and therefore their opinions don't matter.
Oh, that is a good point. And it came back to me. The main point is that we can't say that it's not harmful across the board if you are trying to create legislation based off of these ideas, which is happening in certain areas. There's Bill C-16 in Canada. There was some stuff in New York that I covered a while back regarding misgendering people.
I feel like it's not my place to look at somebody like Riley Dennis and go, you ain't trans. I don't know. And the whole non-binary thing, I'm starting to think, like, yeah, there's no backing by science, but if people feel this way, isn't that enough backing?
The short answer to that is no.
An emphatic no. Because this is, let's not forget, this is the same community that is always talking about how facts supersede feelings, and limbic responses are totally primitive, and therefore they don't really matter all that much, because we have somehow superseded a limbic response, which for the record we haven't. And therefore we are so above board that we can base everything simply on the facts and in a deep, thorough analysis. So no, how somebody feeling a certain way is not tantamount to that being the reality. It's somebody feels a certain way, whether somebody feels that they're pregnant, does that mean that they are pregnant? No, unless it says that they are actually pregnant, that doesn't mean that they are pregnant. Just because somebody feels a certain way, it's not enough, it's not sufficient for something to be true.
Right. Well, there's just so many comparisons that you can make to this. There's the whole, well, what about the people that feel the earth is flat? Or what about people that feel that God is real? There's so many situations where we don't extend the same courtesy and just say, well, no, you don't have proof for this, so no matter what you feel, it doesn't matter. And I feel like it's inconsistent to just make this the turning point where, well, they don't really need science because they feel it and they say that it's their reality. Well, everybody has a perception of their own subjective reality, but we can't go and base societal rules and law off of solely off of feelings. Because I mean, you could argue that it comes to murder or something, well, most people in society think that that's morally wrong. So you could say, well, there's an emotional aspect as to why murder is wrong. But then you could say, well, the rational
corollary to that part would be there would be very few situations where people would just say completely without any other response or anything like that, just say, oh, well, that person committed murder, it was totally acceptable.
Right. I mean, it's
very few edge cases.
It's an extreme example, but basically what I'm saying is that we may have laws that are based on both a moral and a rational. It's like a balance of the two. I mean, because obviously the rational reasoning for that is that going around and allowing people to kill each other is not conducive to a productive society. And you need to, on some level, protect your citizens to keep things running and not in utter chaos.
Isn't that like, I don't know, like, I don't know. Again, reflection. I don't know. You guys all know I'm confused about this. I don't think anti-feminism and like LGBT things go hand in hand. I will always be not feminist, but I think I can have a more open mind when it comes to like stuff like this, especially when I don't understand it. I understand feminism. That's why I'm not a feminist. But when it comes to like the gender stuff, I don't get it. Like, I feel like I'm a bad person for not giving it a chance.
Well, see, I think that's one of the big problems here, is that the people that are arguing so hard in favor of this are using this argument of emotional manipulation. They're trying to make otherwise decent people feel guilty for questioning things that don't make sense to them. If you are trying to introduce this new concept in society, then people are going to question it, especially if it's something that you're kind of throwing out of nowhere. It's like, you can say these identities have existed since ancient times or whatever, as much as you want, but they were obviously not mainstream. There's always been outcasts in society. You can't expect something like this to catch on overnight, especially if you are trying to compel people to use words that weren't worked into the lexicon that everybody uses organically, and they're trying to be forced. They're saying, if you misgender me, that's an offense. That's illegal. That's what they're working towards. And maybe not everybody that labels in that way, but the vocal people. And in certain areas, it actually seems to be catching on, where these ideas, these very vague ideas of gender identity and gender expression, which is just fashion, are being worked into law.
Right now I am still stuck in, there's no scientific proof for it, so it's not a thing, but I'm not gonna be like, you ain't real.
I mean, that's the whole "you're not real" thing. I get that a lot on the videos that I've made regarding the whole gender identity thing, where they're like, well, you're saying I'm not real, I'm right here. It's like, nobody's saying that you are not a real person. It just means that the terminology that you're using, this idea, this concept that you have that you're trying to assert on the rest of reality, is probably not real in the way that you think it is.
Right. It's you are imposing your perception of yourself on to other people. That doesn't necessarily make it real. I mean, I can go into a school and walk into a classroom and take my piece of chalk out and say I am a teacher, because in my reality I am one, but that doesn't mean I'm even a teacher at that particular school, or a school teacher at all. I may be in the education field, but that doesn't make me a teacher.
Right. I mean, you can't just, again, it leads to this thing where if you decide that feelings are all that matter and we have to validate feelings at every turn, the ultimate and I know some people will be like, well, that's a slippery slope, but I think we're approaching the slope. I think we're starting to roll down it slowly, where you come to the logical conclusion where you won't be able to say no to anybody's feelings anymore because you've given up the ability to question somebody when they say, I feel this way, therefore it is.
And even if you personally haven't relinquished the responsibility, the mere fact that legislation is coming to prevent this means that at some point you have either put somebody in place or complicitly or explicitly, or it's or you haven't done anything to stop it from happening. So once again, you're either being complicit in allowing it or you're explicitly allowing it. And if you're not, and then you would be fighting against it. So my perspective on that is that, I mean, I don't agree with it, but it would be, to me, it affects my life just as much as the so-called white nationalists would affect my personal life. Yeah, they may say people like me and people that look like me are inherently inferior individuals because of some arbitrary metric that they've made up that makes them look superior, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. I still have bills I pay, I still have a job, or I still have a business, and I don't have to worry. I don't have to think about them. But the minute that they start going to our legislatures and telling them that they need to create policy that establishes what I am or am not in their opinion, that's when it becomes a problem.
Right. So really there are very few people that are arguing you can't you literally cannot label yourself this way. You can, whether or not anybody takes you seriously, that's up to them, but you shouldn't need legislative protection based off of an identity label.
Right. And if people don't take it seriously, I mean, at this point, the reason that it seems most people wouldn't take it seriously is because they have constantly redefined what it means to be any of these things, to the point where, like we said before, it's now based on whether or not you feel a certain way. Well, then anybody can be anything at that point. So then why does this term even exist if we already just have words that we can use to define something?
It's called individuality, it's called personality. We have words already, but I guess everybody needs their own or something.
Back in the day when it was like super popular to be like, oh, Milo Stewart and Riley Dennis are trenders, I totally got in on that, and like I regret it, and I'm very sorry, and I forget how much influence I have. I blew up very quickly. I have like 20 something videos, and I'm about to hit 1 million soon. It's like you forget how much influence you have, and it's like I do nothing. I sit at home, I do nothing. I talk to my boyfriend, like I shitpost on the internet, I play with my bunny, I live with my parents still. That's my life. And I forget I potentially have a lot of influence on people on the internet.
The one thing I found ironic about this, and probably unintentionally so on her part, is that she said, she acknowledges that she has this influence over people and the way that they think, which, I mean, I agree. I may not like all the ideas that she puts out, but she does have an influence. I mean, just judging by the way people react when you give any kind of response, even if it's not a malicious one. So she does have a very strong influence. And it's funny to me that she just went, and yeah, she's reflecting. You can say she's kind of doing a stream of consciousness here, and maybe none of these ideas that she's putting out there are set in stone in her mind, but she did just say the whole, well, if they have these feelings, isn't that enough backing? And you got to acknowledge that some of the people listening to this are going to be like, oh, well, maybe she's right, that's a possibility. I mean, it's fine to entertain those ideas, but I found humor in that.
Internet, and I realize that a lot of what I say and a lot of the opinions I hold have an effect on people. and either that be positive or negative. And the more I grow, the more I realize, like, I gotta just be careful about stuff like that. But I had a feeling that Milo was just like a kid. He was 17 when he made those videos, those viral videos that fucking even Leafy responded to. And that's exactly what happened. Milo said, like, hey, I was 17 when I made these videos. Thank the Lord that YouTube wasn't popular when I was 17. Fucking neckbeard, edgy, fedora, atheist videos. That's what I would have made. I would have been the target of like a million videos, and Leafy would have made a video of me. Like, that is how cringy I was. And people change. I've changed a lot in the past. Oh my God, since I've started YouTube, I look at my old videos and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, me and Skeptic's opinion of this stuff has changed a lot. I love laughing at my old self. I love it. I'm planning on doing a video where I critique my old videos and laugh at them and laugh at myself. And it's one of my biggest beliefs is if you don't cringe at yourself from even a few months ago, you're not growing. So yeah, I hope this whole positive thing keeps going because it's awesome and it has me in a really good mood. And I'll see you guys next time.
I mean, that was that last part wasn't really relevant.
It was cringeworthy though. This has nothing to do individually with her, but it does.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yes, we got guests. Come on. All right, I love this. Mind out of sync. What's your problem now? You have to be a raging cunt to people that you disagree with. I'd love to know where exactly that we've been doing that, because I mean, all I've been doing is pausing the video and we've been responding to things that she said, and in some cases agreeing. And funny enough, I was going to say that I agree that people change, people can change their opinions, and that this discussion could go into how the way social media allows our lives to be recorded so that people don't forget the past. Because before social media came along, as a human being, you grow throughout different stages of your life, but nobody was there. I mean, there were camcorders and whatnot, but to this extent, nobody was there to record all these, what you might call cringe moments, and remind you of them every step of the way. But once you put it out on YouTube or Facebook or something like that, one person screenshots or one person downloads that video, regardless of whether you remove it, it's out there forever. So people need to be in this age of social media. I think people need to be more responsible, or at least taught to be more responsible with what they are doing with themselves.
Well, it seems in general that personal responsibility is not at all required anymore. And now it's, I mean, just think about when these celebrities get nude photos leaked, the blame is never put on them for trusting a provider who has 0% reason to be trusted. And instead, the blame goes to the neck-bearded, or whatever terms they call, and but they don't blame the person that uploaded it. They don't blame the people that are supposed to be custodians of the data. They go out of their way to avoid giving them any kind of culpability.
So, fuck being responsible. That's retarded. It's also lame and boring.
Well, you just described yourself in a nutshell, so I guess you should be really responsible. Anyway,
oh, this is killing me.
My whole problem with that is that, like, I use the nude photos as an example because it shows how much people put trust into things, into Facebook and Facebook properties. Since I'm thinking of Instagram, but Snapchat is also its own company, but they have no reason to. I don't see anybody going and reading any of the privacy policies or terms of service, which would let them know that, oh, hey, maybe you don't want to use this, because just because Snapchat may keep it for a few minutes on the user interface doesn't mean it goes away. Your information will always be there, and somebody will always find it and always find a way to misuse it every time.
Right. And I mean, as far as the whole nude photos things go, or things like that, of course people, need to be responsible with that. But that doesn't mean that you are advocating that something bad should happen to them because they were irresponsible. It's just maybe you need to think about that these things are possible, and if you are taking part in this activity, one of the consequences are that they could be leaked, because a person that wants to do that doesn't care whether it's wrong or not. So at that point, you're the only one that can control what happens.
But of course, that's lame and boring, and apparently I am.
Are you like looking at the chat?
I am every now and then, and apparently I'm making that person suicidal. So I feel like I failed at my job because didn't finish the job, but whatever. I'm not too worried about what some try hard, edgy wannabe kid.
I mean, maybe there's some delay in the chat, but like I said, I don't support people having their private photos stolen. But if you are uploading them to a cloud service or something like that, that's just dangerous.
At that point, it's not private, in my opinion, because somebody has the ability to go and monitor all that stuff. Somebody had to write the source code to get everything working. So anybody who designed or worked to design any of that piece of software knows every area where that data transfers. And so you have to be careful about even arguing, well, this is a private place or something like that, because it's private within the confines of whoever the company is that's actually doing something. No, I don't use edgy as an argument. And I simply called you an idiot. That's what I was calling you. That's not an argument. I'm just calling you what you are.
Everything that anybody says this person has a problem with, I don't even know what the argument is. I don't think there is one.
No, it's that person's just always about stirring things up.
Well,
and
we're kind of off the topic of Shoe's video now. I mean, her video's over. It's done. So whatever we're talking about is just loosely related to the topic at hand. I mean, we kind of moved on to social media, so apparently I piss a lot of people off, or we piss a lot of people off. I don't know what it is. Nobody can seem to qualify their position.
I've expected people never to really articulate their. You're not saying anything, so it's not that I'm too stupid, and I would be very reticent to call somebody stupid who can actually use words that are longer than anything you've actually written on this chat at all. So, I mean, I at least spell "you're" the correct way, not with 2 letters. If you're going to call somebody stupid, at least have something to say.
I think this stream may have worn its welcome. Like, you weren't able to get my point on that Blair White video. Well, what was your point? I don't even remember the video, to be honest.
Do you really think somebody who calls himself Mind Out of Sync really has a point?
I mean, the honest answer, no. And I think I've been pretty charitable in my interactions with this person, but at some point it just becomes pointless. You can come on the stream and argue your point. But I feel like I should start a new one if that's the case, because we've covered the topic here, and I don't think there's really anywhere else to take it.
No, not unless anybody wants to talk about the pleasures of functional programming with me.
All right, so I guess it didn't last that long, but I think we covered everything regarding this topic, so we will end the stream here, and depending on what happens in the chat, maybe I'll come back with a new stream. All right, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.